Mr. Tim Berry and John Vanderslice. Gentlemen, go ahead and introduce yourself. We'll start with John today.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Vanderslice, and I do own a Sandler Performance Center here in Southern New Jersey. Southern New Jersey is about where I am. It's about 7.5 miles from downtown Philadelphia. So a lot of times people think of New Jersey, they think of North Jersey, very close to New York, but we are very near Philadelphia. Good to be here.
Very good. I'll be the anchorman today, obviously. So I'm Tim Berry. I own the Sandler Performance Center here in Fort Worth, Texas. We are approximately 15 miles from DFW Airport and 30 miles from Dallas, and happy to be here.
There you go. Excellent. So for those who are new to this, we do 30 minutes on the how, not the what. Lots of people out there telling you what you should be doing. We're giving you tactics that you should be able to put in and into use immediately after these webinars. So going to do this maybe a hair differently today. The topic, which at first, this was suggested by our good friend Michael Norton. And at first I thought he was literally asking me this question. And then I realized he was suggesting it as a topic, but curious where your heads go just before I get into asking a chat question. Where do your heads go when you see this sentence, gentlemen?
Yeah, I'll say, because I know we're going to get into some detail here, so I'll leave it a little bit broad. For me, when we talk about why not treat every sales day like it's the end of the month or year, it makes me think about focus and accomplishment rather than activity, which I know you're going to dive into that, so I'll leave it there.
Absolutely. Love it. Tim, how about you?
Yeah, when I consider this topic, I do see this in the general public with salespeople. There's this hysterical activity towards the end of the month, quarter, or year, and I think it's a great topic specifically because what we also know is that your high performers don't scramble. They're consistent in their structure and how they work their day. And so I love this, because if we're going to emulate the top performers, we've really got to focus on what it is that they do and their mindset and how they create that structure. So I think it's a wonderful topic. I'm excited about this one.
Absolutely. And my head goes to a saying that I use all the time, which is don't ride the roller coaster. And I used to be a big time roller coaster fanatic. But in sales, I don't want to ride the roller coaster, and we'll get into that in a little bit as well. So we always lead off with a question in chat. So in the chat box, curious whether you're a manager, leader in an organization, or an individual performer, month over month, how predictable are your sales results? And we're talking about net new revenue as well as recurring revenue that happens. How predictable is it? I know in our businesses, Tim and John, we're sales professionals first, right? We sell every single day, which maybe makes us a little unique in the world of training, but we sell, train, coach, and consult in that order. So we have to produce predictability. How do you guys manage a predictability?
Tim?
Yeah, it's for me, it's calendar blocking out and having a plan in the first place. So I know typically what's going to be, what I need to do in any given day and even week. And for me, it's just the making sure that I've got a strong structure in place and a plan that I work to the plan so I can be consistently executing. So that's how I do it. It might sound a little simplistic, but for me, I have a tendency to be a little bit of a procrastinator. And if I allow myself to do that, then my sales it's very much boom bust. And so I've created the structure to stay very consistent. So, and it's all behavior based.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with Tim. I think he said it right. I mean, it's behavior based. I mean, it's really for those that keep a cookbook or a playbook and have kept it consistently, and you look back on your results when you look at those lag measures and you look back, It really is a formula. I mean, you can predict the results, much like, baking a cake. I mean, tonight's, it's Wednesday, so it's my turn to make dinner. So, I'll follow a recipe. And if I follow the recipe, I'll end up with the right result. If I don't follow the recipe, I won't get the result. So you said something I think is really important, Tim. You said may seem a bit simplistic, and it does. But see, there's the trick, because I think we look at it sometimes and say, "Well, it's too simple," and we try to find complication, or there must be something else, where it's an excuse to look in another direction. But it really is that simple. It's blocking and tackling.
Yeah. And for myself, I said this in a training that I had yesterday. And I was put on this planet to wake up every day and do whatever feels good and feel good about whatever I was doing. But that doesn't exactly work in a sales role, right? Because what happens is I end up being reactive to whatever is occurring in my world. So I've learned to be very, very proactive, and it speaks to a lot of what we're talking about: calendar blocking, time management, etc. So let's get into this topic a little bit. Appreciate the comments in chat. Leo had said that if you don't keep a strong pipeline, you'll always be chasing your tail. Joe said very cyclical and seasonal, especially in the consumable product offering. Absolutely, Joe. We should at some point talk about different strategies around that, maybe on a different call. This one, so I'm going to kind of paraphrase this question. Why do you guys see this happening out there? And I'll comment from my experience, but why do you guys see this with clients or prospective clients, this push at the end of a month, a year, a quarter, in your worlds?
Well, I'll tee it up for you two, and I'll give this simple answer in my mind. They do it because they have to.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh crap, it's the end of the month, end of the quarter. I haven't reached my goal. I haven't, done, whatever I have to do, and we have no choice. It's much like when you were in school, and I trust me, I can relate to this. But it's like, oh God, I got a test tomorrow, and study, and because I didn't plan, and something that people may be familiar with, we'll talk about a little bit later. It's Parkinson's law, and this is why it occurs.
I just spoke
And what
about
is that
Parkinson's
Parkinson's law?
Yeah. Parkinson's law is the law that states that work expands to fill the time allotted.
It is true, and one of the great things that I learned, a mentor of mine told me a long time ago, was that if you have 10 minutes to do a task, it'll take 10 minutes. If you have 5 minutes to do a task, it'll take you 5 minutes. A task will expand to fit that time that you allow it.
Exactly right.
I think when I see, when I consider this question, one of the real benefits of having a job in sales is that we've got some flexibility. And I see this with people across the board where, if you need to go get your dry cleaning, you've got the flexibility to do it, because typically in sales, you're not chained to your desk. You've got the ability to be out and about. And I would assert that, I think a lot of sales professionals, obviously nobody on this call, but I see a lot of sales professionals that'll take their foot off the gas. They'll take their foot off the pedal at the end of the month and sort of cruise, like they made their month or their quarter or their year. And then they kind of check out a little bit. And that's a trap that's what ends up causing the hysterical activity starting at the middle of the month, and then it's unfortunate because that leads to very unpredictable and uneven results.
Yep. So as always, we want to keep it simple for you. I think it comes down to three things as we talked, kind of preparing for this: poor time management, and this is actually a topic that's come up a lot recently, and we'll get into this in a minute. No defined process or repeatable process, right? So we're out there kind of winging it as sales professionals. And then the last one, which is interesting, and certainly there are probably 20 things we could put in this slide, but little to no understanding of what equal business stature actually means. And we'll get into that in a minute as well. But what we see from a results perspective, when these three things happen, we get varied, unpredictable results, which is what Tim just led to, right? And I've had people ask, and I'll ask you guys, it's an interesting question. Somebody said to me, "Hey, wait a minute, if I just put a trend line, right, going from across any one of these graphs, likely," and this is a generic example, but when I put the trend line across my graph, it's up at the end of the year. So what's the big deal if I'm unpredictable or not, as long as the end result is I'm up? Thoughts on that one, gentlemen? Because that was an interesting retort to, this question that came up earlier in the year.
Yeah, and I think it depends. I mean, I think, you're never going to have a trend line. We know that growth isn't linear, right?
Right.
I mean, we climb and we camp, we climb and we camp. The
Mhm.
challenge is sometimes if we think we've camped for a week and it turns out to be a month or 2 months, and did you arrive at that result by accident? And I really doubt it. I mean, when we see people that have these drastic ups and downs, right? Not the climb camp, but the stair step,
Right.
and they arrive at a result. There's usually, you can trace back, they got a big order they didn't expect, or something happened, or they arrived by accident. And it creates a lot of anxiety, uncertainty as a business owner and former business executive. I couldn't predict inventory, stocks, cash flow, margin retention, anything with a chart that looked like that. So you
Absolutely.
may get there, but the consequence of that type of behavior is dramatic.
100%. 100%. We may miss opportunities, right? So opportunities pass us by as we're doing the camping and climbing, right? If we don't have a repeatable process, poor time management, opportunities pass us by. The dreaded F word, free consulting. And so free consulting happens, right? As we make that push, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, we make that push, we feel like we have to give away too much to get, right? Increased anxiety. John, you mentioned that. Increased anxiety on the individual as well as on the business. And then we get decreased job satisfaction, right? Why am I killing myself, right? In this crazy, responsive firefighting type of mode. And then lastly, there's that margin erosion because we give away margin to get whatever we can at the end of a week, a quarter, a month, et cetera, whatever the time period is. So let's break these down, kind of one by one.
Mm-hmm.
So poor time management, and apparently I'm out of order here on my numbers. I apologize, but let's take poor time management as number one. Pretend with me, I guess. So I've seen this. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but time management has come up a lot lately. Are you guys seeing that as well? And then comment on me from a time management perspective, right? We mentioned time blocking earlier. Just give me a little commentary on that.
I agree with you. I've been hearing this a lot lately. That they're one's calendar is kind of open and subject to the whims of everyone else. And what we know is that if you've got an opening on your calendar, you're going to have to fill it with something. Mm-hmm. And so if someone else's emergency pops in your door, it now becomes your emergency, and we mistake that for productivity. And in sales, that just doesn't fly. And so there needs to be, we do a lot of calendar blocking, and we teach calendar blocking constantly because everyone else will assert their priority over yours. If you don't, and unfortunately, there's a little bit of a discipline that you have to have in order to manage your calendar, and I think time blocking is the answer for me.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, well, there's a couple things here, and it's a bigger subject maybe than it appears. I consider it more poor task management than time management, but time management, I think calendar blocking in itself, I think, is pretty straightforward and simple. And I've seen people make all the pretty colors on the calendar and, oh, look, it looks really great. And they put the things in there. But then the problem is they don't have a plan on how they're going to execute the behavior. So
Yeah.
they put in LinkedIn from 9 to 10. And then they get to that 9 to 10. It's like, oh gosh, okay, what do I do now? And it's poor planning about the task, so that when they get there on the calendar, they get sidetracked, or the time to do that task is much too long, or they're getting ready to start the task and they're not prepared. So I think that the calendar blocking in itself, much like you had the picture here, is
Yeah.
pretty simple. But you have to prepare for when you get to those tasks that you've blocked the time for, that you're ready to go and hit the ground when you do it.
I agree 100%, John. We we had a session earlier this morning where we talked about time blocking, and the key word in there, the key phrase that was used frequently was calendar discipline, which I think is exactly what you're talking about, which is task management.
Mm-hmm.
We mistake as sales professionals activity for productivity. We think because we're busy, we're being productive. And often that is absolutely not the case. We're putting out fires, or people are commanding our time, hijacking our time, and we feel busy. We feel like we've got plenty to do, but the reality is we may not be efficient as we could be during that time. So not only time blocking, which is very simple and straightforward, but we've got to have good task management or calendar discipline along with that. And we frequently talk about, if I've got a prospecting activity, for example, just take picking up the phone and calling, or even let's say a networking event that is highly productive. If somebody calls me and says, Jim, let's have an appointment, I'm going to stand my ground on my calendar, right? If I've got prospecting at 10, I'm going to say, John, any chance we could do it at a different time? And if 10's the only time that'll work from John, I'm going to have a strong agreement as to what's going to happen in that time, and that is written in pen, not pencil. So I've got to take that as serious as anything else that I would have on my calendar. I mean, we certainly wouldn't trade away the signing of a contract, face-to-face meeting where a contract's going to get signed, for somebody who calls up and says, hey, can we just have a quick 15-minute conversation about the weather? Why would we give up prospecting time, for the same type of thing? Sure. So this is the roller coaster I referenced earlier, right? And it's not having a repeatable sales process. So shameless self-plugs here coming. That's what we do, John and Tim and I, repeatable sales process. But from your perspective, and I can give my opinion, but what's riding the roller coaster to you guys?
Well, every day's a new day. I mean, I when I started out in sales, I didn't get any training. I don't know if anybody else fell into that bucket, but it was like, here you go, kid, go get them. And my territory was North Jersey and New York City. And every day I got up, and it could depend on my mood. Was I feeling up? Was I feeling down? I did not have a process. Some days I did really well. Then I didn't really know why. Other days, not so much. So you have to have a process. I mean, Tiger Woods or Jack Nicklaus or LeBron James or any athlete you can think of, they don't get to the line and say, all right, now if I get one of those free throws where I get fouled, what am I going to do? Right. Or, I mean, they pretty much have a repeatable process. All right, wait a minute, hand on the ball. I mean, which hand goes where? No, they figured it out. It's the same thing with sales. If you're a sales professional, it's a process. It's a absolute skill set that you have to practice, rehearse, and commit to your mental memory. No doubt about it.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, some elite athletes in there, John. I think the reality is that an elite athlete like that, they have a different discipline than the rest of the planet. Otherwise, we'd all be elite athletes, right? So, there's a great story about Kobe Bryant where a reporter wanted to interview him. Reporter asked him what time to be at the gym, and he said 5 a.m. And he gets to the gym, and Kobe Bryant is drenched in sweat. And reporter was confused and said, wait a minute, I thought you said you were starting at 5 a.m. He said, No, you asked me what time to meet me here. I start at 4. So he had already been there for an hour practicing, and he said it's his routine, that's his discipline, but he just didn't take the interview until 5 a.m. So I think we have to learn to be disciplined so that we don't ride the roller coaster,
Yeah,
right?
that's a big point. I just want to put an emphasis on. And again, I highly recommend, if you haven't read it, go out and get Atomic Habits, because I think a lot of times we fool ourselves when we say things like, "Well, geez, I'm never going to be as disciplined as Jim, or I'm never
Yeah,
going to be as disciplined as Mary." It's not really that. It's process and repeatable consistency leads to discipline. It's not that somebody has. Now, there are some people that are more focused than others, but if you can form habits, that leads to discipline. It's not the reverse, much like behavior drives attitude.
absolutely. Tim, you want to take the shameless self plug?
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of Sandler training, and this is the shameless plug, is that it's a duplicable process, and it's linear. It's designed to go in order 1 through 7. There's 7 steps to the Sandler sales process, and the beauty of it is that you're high performers, and these are the ones that consistently hit their numbers through execution of behaviors. The process itself gives you the ability to look at your pipeline and you know what to do next. You know where you stand. And so the concept of qualifying the qualified quickly and disqualifying the unqualified equally as quickly eliminates a lot of the chasing and the hysterical activity and the quote unquote never ending follow up that so many salespeople do. So I think that this is why I particularly love the Sandler concept, because it gives me that structure to it gives me the roadmap to where I am when in any given relationship that I'm building with prospects.
I think I always get excited whenever I hear that somebody actually has coaching or training within their organization, right? Because they're investing in themselves. Obviously, we do this for a living, right? We sell this and train this every day. If you've got a good process and you're following it and you're executing it 100%, you're way ahead of the average. But the problem is that the average won't take it to the same spot that an elite athlete will. How much do you think Tiger invests in his coaches, right? Or LeBron or Shaq or any elite athlete? They all have coaches and they all invest in themselves to get better. I mean, the difference between the top 100 golfers on the PGA Tour is less than a half a stroke. Those guys are looking for slight edge, right? John, you talk about slight edge all the time in sales.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And I mean, it's the investment. If you think of it, it's not only the investment in the coach, right? But it's the investment in the learning itself, and then the practice. I mean,
Yeah.
I used to love to get down to Augusta National, to the Masters golf tournament, and I would have more enjoyment watching them practice than play. But, they would oftentimes go out and play. They'd finish the round and head right back to the range because they practiced maybe a shot that they didn't hit as well as they wanted, or a shot they hit that went really well. They wanted to get more of that.
Yep.
So if you really believe that sales is a profession, we're obviously biased. We think, that 32,000 people a year can't be wrong, but it's possible. But so we're biased to Sandler. But to Jim's point, if you have a process and you are repeating it consistently and getting the results you want, then you're way, way ahead. But sales is absolutely a skill set. And the difference between winning and losing an opportunity oftentimes is a slight edge. Just like Jim said, in a golf tournament, it can be one shot every 4 rounds. I'll give you one other thing to go ahead and Google. Stuart Diamond at Google. Stuart Diamond at Google. Watch his speech. He was my professor of negotiation in business school, and he talks about the difference of being a batter in baseball and what that slight edge does for you. I don't know the numbers enough to repeat it, or I would, but it's Stuart Diamond at Google. Very short on Google. Very worthwhile seeing on YouTube.
Absolutely. All right. So this one, a little bit of, I took some liberties here with our group. I'm a big fan of equal business stature, and I think that so many sales professionals are lacking it, and we've got to find a way to create it, right? Because without it, we become subservient, deferential. The buyer ends up leading the process. We end up desperate, right? Nothing worse than the desperation last move. That's really what the title's about, right? End of the month, I'm desperate. I'll take anything. I'm unprepared. I give too much away. I'm firefighting instead of leading. And so the challenge with this is that the buyer's leading, we don't have any predictability, et cetera. And so what can we do about it? I think one of the things we talk about in Sandler frequently is this concept of the upfront contract, right? And having a mutually agreed upon dialogue on the following three things: time, agenda, and outcome. And John, Tim, I don't know about you guys, but if there's one thing everybody could take away from this, just doing this consistently, I think is a game changer, so that you don't have to hit the end of your time period, your month, your quarter, your year, and be any of those things I just went through, which is, the desperation, the Hail Mary, et cetera. Curious about your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, upfront contract. I mean, it's often what I see in all the people that we work with that they seem to grab a hold of, and it's the most kind of tactical, get your head around piece. I mean, yeah, just doing those things is going to put you so far ahead of your competition. And a lot of times people will an upfront contract, but they fail to look at the outcome or possible next steps. Tim talked about disqualifying quickly. It's okay if we're not a good fit. We're not going to be a good fit for everybody. And it's okay to tell people that we may not be a good fit. But on the other hand, if we are, typically here's what next steps might look like. That is a game changer for people.
Yep. It's all about consistent, repeatable process so that we can get to predictable results. I think as we get close to the end of our time, we just want to summarize, we've talked about. Number one, set strong upfront contracts throughout the sales cycle. We just covered that. We've got to own our time, and we've got to find a repeatable process somewhere. If we're just subject to whatever happens throughout the day, we're along for the ride. So as we wrap up, certainly we're here to be a resource. Tim, John, your contact information is there, mine as well. Any last words for people? Do me a favor and type in one takeaway that you got into the chat as we're wrapping up here. But any last words from you guys on this topic?
Yeah, I'd love to hear any takeaways that you got. It really helps us. But, I'll tell you, a good friend of mine gave me a T-shirt about 20 years ago that I think about when I relate to this. And on the front of the T-shirt, it says, "I've never lost." And then you turn around the back and it says, "I was just a little bit behind when time ran out." So think about that. You don't want to be a little bit behind when time runs out.
I love it. Tim, last word?
Yeah, I think the profession of sales is a noble one, and there is some science to it, and I think that's what separates, again, your high performers from your average schmo. And so if you're striving to achieve that high performer status, then absolutely take these three things and get at it. So
good stuff. Appreciate everybody investing time with us today. John, Tim, appreciate you guys. We'll see you next week on our next Wednesday Grab and Go Growth Tactics webinar.
All right, everybody.
Have a great
Thank
week,
you.
everyone.
Have a great balance of the week, everybody.